I woke up today with a folded note on the nightstand right beside my bed, not under it, not on the floor, right next to where my hand rests when I sleep. I live alone. No visitors, no cleaners, no family with spare keys, but the handwriting, I recognized it. And when I opened the note and saw what was written inside, I couldn't breathe, because the person who wrote it has been dead for 4 years. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Raymond Carter. I'm 63 years old, and I live alone in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of Portland, Oregon. I thought I left the mysteries of my life behind the day my wife passed. But the note I found this morning, in her handwriting, using her old paper, containing a message only she ever said, dragged me into a truth I never imagined. A truth someone has been hiding right inside my home. People think loneliness is quiet, but it is. It makes noise. It creaks through floorboards at night, whispers doubts into the corners of your house, and settles into the empty chair opposite your dinner table. Since my wife Margaret passed, silence had become a second tenant, a polite, unwelcome one. But the silence in my house this morning was different. It wasn't empty. It felt like it was holding its breath. The sun had barely risen, just a thin streak of gray cutting through the blinds, when I reached for my glasses and instead touched a small, folded piece of paper. My mind didn't register it at first, but when I picked it up, my heartbeat slowed to a crawl. Cream-colored stationery, thick texture, a faint lavender scent, my wife's scent, my wife's paper, her handwriting. I hadn't seen it since the day she died. My fingers shook violently as I unfolded it. One sentence, 5 words. Don't trust the man downstairs. I stared at the words for so long the letters began to blur. I whispered into the empty room, Margaret. My voice echoed back at me in a way that made my stomach tighten. Margaret used that exact paper for grocery lists, birthday notes, and little messages she'd hide around the house whenever she traveled for work. But no one had touched her things since the funeral, not even me. I kept everything sealed away in a box at the top of our bedroom closet. I hadn't opened it since the day I placed it there. My brain scrambled for explanations. A prank, a break-in, a leftover note I'd forgotten existed. No, my wife never wrote anything ominous, never dramatic, never cryptic, and certainly never anything about a man downstairs. I live in a single-story home. There is no downstairs. The impossible detail, that's what terrified me most. Not the handwriting, not the memory it dragged back. Not even the lavender scent that hadn't existed in my house for years. It was the impossible part. The note referenced something that didn't exist in my home, unless the writer meant somewhere beneath my house. My throat tightened. The crawl space, I hadn't checked it in months. Our house had an old hatch in the hallway closet that led to a narrow crawl space under the floorboards. Rats, pipes, dust. Nothing worth thinking about, unless someone was down there, unless someone had been down there. I pressed the note against my leg to stop my hands from shaking. I forced myself to think logically. Margaret couldn't have written this. She died 4 years ago after a brutal fight with lung cancer. I held her hand through the last breath. I watched them close her eyes. She was gone, so whoever wrote this must have gotten into the house, and they wanted me scared. But why use Margaret's paper, her handwriting, her scent, unless the person knew exactly how to break me, unless it wasn't a stranger? Unless it was someone who knew us both. I stood up, legs weak, holding the note like it might burn through my skin. And then a sound, a faint one, barely audible, beneath me, like a box sliding across the floor under the floorboards. I froze. The noise stopped. My entire body pulsed with dread. I stepped back from the bed slowly. The wooden board beneath my heel creaked louder than it should have. Then another sound, a whisper, soft thump, directly under the bedroom. I backed out of the room, my breath loud in my ears. The hallway closet door was cracked open. I never leave that door open. Never. Inside that closet was the hatch to the crawl space. A small square cut into the floor, secured with 2 simple latch hooks. My lungs tightened. I grabbed the closet handle and pushed it open slowly. The hatch was closed, thank God, but one latch was undone. Only one. As if someone had started to climb up and stopped when they heard me wake. The room spun. I stumbled back 2 steps and leaned against the wall. Someone had been in the crawl space, or still was. I needed help. I needed someone else here. Anyone, but I had no family nearby, no close neighbors. and the police wouldn't come over a half-open latch and a dead woman's note. They'd think I was confused, delusional with grief. Maybe I was. I reached into my pocket for my phone, but it wasn't there. I rushed back to the bedroom and scanned the nightstand. No phone. I checked the floor. The blankets, the bathroom, nothing. Then I saw the cord on the wall, my phone charger. Unplugged. My heart thudded painfully. I always plug it in at night. Not last night. Someone unplugged it. Someone who needed me not to have a phone when they were beneath my house. Someone who left a note in my dead wife's handwriting to warn me or to confuse me. I didn't know which. I only knew one thing. I wasn't alone in my home. Trying to steady myself, I went back to the bedroom to check the windows. All locked, I approached the dresser to see if anything else had been moved, and that's when I noticed it. A photo frame, face down on the carpet. One of our old anniversary photos, Margaret leaning against me, her smile brighter than the sun. I picked it up slowly. The glass wasn't cracked. There were no fingerprints, but someone had taped something to the back of the frame, a small strip of paper. I peeled it off with trembling fingers. Another message, same handwriting, same paper. You forgot what's buried. My knees nearly gave out. Forgot what's buried. Buried where? Buried who? I felt my pulse hammering in my chest so hard I thought it might tear itself loose. And then before I could make sense of the message, a third sound. A scraping. A long, dragging scrape, coming from directly beneath me. Slow, deliberate, as if someone down there was waiting for me to read those words. The scraping beneath the floor stopped as suddenly as it began. Not faded, not slowed, stopped, as if the person below knew I was listening. The silence left a pressure in the air, the kind that fills your throat and makes swallowing feel dangerous. I forced myself to breathe, one slow inhale, one trembling exhale. The note crumpled slightly in my hand as I ran my thumb over the handwriting, Margaret's loops, her curves, her tiny way of dotting the I lower than most people. I knew that handwriting like my own heartbeat. But Margaret had been gone for 4 years, which meant someone was mimicking her handwriting with disturbing accuracy, or someone had taken her old letters and cut pieces from them. That thought chilled me more than the cold air seeping through the cracks in the closet door. Someone had been inside the house long enough to go through boxes, drawers, memories. Someone who knew exactly what would hurt me most. I moved slowly back to the hall closet. The hatch sat in the center, paint-chipped lid with 2 metal latches. One still locked, one undone. I crouched down and placed my fingers beneath the loose latch. It was warm, not room temperature warm, body warm. Someone had touched it recently. My mind replayed the timeline. I went to sleep around 11 p.m. I didn't get up during the night. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. to a note placed inches from my hand. Whoever did this was confident enough to enter my bedroom while I slept. The realization made my skin crawl. I swallowed and backed away from the closet. No, I wasn't opening that hatch alone, not until daylight, not without help, but I still didn't have my phone, which meant I had 2 options: leave the house and go to a neighbor, search the house room by room for my phone. Option 1 meant walking outside barefoot in my pajamas, unarmed, with whoever was under my floorboards listening to every step. Option 2 meant staying inside with them. Neither felt survivable. But Margaret's second note kept echoing in my mind. You forgot what's buried. Buried where? Buried what? A body, a memory, a secret she kept from me. Something in my stomach twisted. There was one place Margaret asked me never to clean out, her old sewing room. It had remained untouched since her death. I never questioned it. I couldn't bring myself to. But now I wondered why she'd cared so much about a room full of fabric scraps and dusty drawers. My gaze shifted down the hallway to the door at the far end, her sewing room, a place I hadn't stepped inside in years. My heart thumped. The scraping beneath the floor resumed, this time closer, directly under the hallway, directly between me and that room. I whispered to myself, you can't stay frozen, move. So I did. I walked slowly down the hallway, each floorboard creaking under my weight. The scraping sound followed me, matching my pace, always 1 second behind. As if the person below was crawling beneath me on their stomach, my breath turned shallow. Just get to the room, I repeated in my mind. Just get to the door. When I reached it, I turned the brass knob. It didn't budge. Locked, I froze. Margaret never locked this door. Never. I tried again, still locked. My heart pounded so hard my vision blurred at the edges. If someone had locked this room after she died, they'd been in here. Recently. possibly last night. Holding the note, I leaned my forehead against the door and tried to think. Keys. Her sewing room key was kept in our old bedroom dresser, second drawer under her scarves. I turned back down the hallway and stopped cold. Footsteps, not scraping, not sliding. Footsteps, soft, measured, coming from the kitchen. Slowly, like someone didn't want to be heard but didn't care if they were. I stepped backward, pressing against the wall, heart hammering against my ribs. The footsteps moved closer. Then stopped. I forced myself to look toward the kitchen. The doorway framed only darkness, but I heard breathing. Not mine, not calm, low, shaky, like someone trying to keep quiet but struggling. I swallowed hard. "Who's there?" I called, my voice cracking. No answer, just breathing. Then a whisper, a soft, broken whisper. "Ray." My entire body locked. No one alive calls me that. No one except Margaret. My vision blurred with tears and a different kind of fear. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no," her voice came again. "Ray, please." I shook my head violently. Grief can hallucinate voices. Memory can mimic sound. But this voice had weight, air, presence, something living produced it. I forced myself to take one step forward, then another. The breathing retreated like it sensed my movement and backed away into the kitchen. I reached the doorway slowly. The kitchen looked normal, nothing disturbed, except one thing. A chair had been pulled away from the table, facing the hallway. Facing me, like someone had been sitting in it, watching me sleep through the open bedroom doorway. A nausea surged through me. That chair had been tucked in last night. I moved toward it slowly. On the table was something I hadn't noticed at first. A small, folded scrap of cream-colored paper. I reached out and my fingers brushed the edge. Lavender scent. My heart plummeted. I opened it. Margaret's handwriting. "Stop looking for your phone." My blood ran cold. Because that meant the intruder knew exactly what I was trying to do, knew where I was in the house, knew when I found the hatch, knew I'd checked the dresser, which meant one thing: they had been watching me the entire time. I stumbled back from the table. No, 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 this wasn't random. This wasn't a prank. This was planned, orchestrated. And if these notes weren't from Margaret, then someone was using her memory to hurt me. Someone who knew her handwriting, her paper, her scent. Someone who'd been close to her. Someone who'd been in this house long before today. A chill rippled up my spine. Before I could think, before I could breathe, a new sound cut through the house. A long, loud click. The sound of the front door being unlocked by someone on the inside. The click of the front door lock echoed through the house like a gunshot. I froze in the kitchen doorway, my breath trapped halfway in my lungs. Someone had unlocked the door from the inside, meaning they were not in the crawl space anymore. They were in the house with me. I heard the hinges creak as the door opened slowly. Cold morning air spilled across the floor. The house remained still except for the faint sound of footsteps entering my living room. My mind raced. Could I run? No, front door blocked. Could I hide? No, he knew every room I'd been in. Could I fight? At 63, God help me. My eyes darted to the counter, a knife block. I grabbed the largest one, my hand trembling so violently the blade nearly clattered against the granite. I pressed my back against the kitchen wall as the footsteps grew louder. Slow, calm, deliberate. Whoever this was, they weren't afraid of me. A silhouette appeared in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, head bowed slightly as if listening to the sound of my breathing. I tightened my grip on the knife. "Stay back," I warned, though my voice cracked with fear. The figure lifted his head, and I saw his face. Not a stranger, not a burglar, not a hallucination. My wife's brother, Thomas. My heart nearly burst from confusion. What are you doing here?" I stammered. He didn't answer. His eyes were hollow, not angry, not wild, just empty. He stepped closer. I raised the knife higher. "Thomas, stop. Please just talk to me." Stopped just outside the kitchen light, where the shadows clung to his frame like a second skin. "Put the knife down, Ray," he said finally. His voice wasn't threatening. It was tired, almost sad. My pulse hammered. "Why are you here? How did you get in? Why did you leave these notes?" He shrugged slightly. "I didn't leave them." A chill rippled down my spine. "Then who did?" I demanded. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped into the light. And that's when I noticed it, his hands, trembling. Scarred, calloused, as if he'd been digging or crawling or scraping wood. My throat tightened. "You were under my house," I whispered. He didn't deny it. "Why?" I pressed. He looked at me with an expression that made my chest ache, like a man holding a truth too heavy for one body. I came back, he said softly, to finish what Margaret started. My stomach flipped. What are you talking about? He took one more step but stopped when I flinched. His voice lowered. You remember the night she died. A wave of grief slammed into me. Of course I remember, don't you dare. She told you she wanted to put everything in order before she went, he continued. My breath hitched. She did say that, I whispered. I thought she meant bills, documents, her things. He shook his head. No, Ray, she meant the basement. I froze. The basement, I echoed. We don't have one, he exhaled. You do, or rather you did. My heartbeat stuttered. Thomas, speak plainly. Ran a hand through his graying hair as if steadying himself. When Margaret got sick, he said slowly, she told me something you weren't strong enough to hear. I gripped the counter behind me. She told me, he continued, there was something buried beneath your house. The notes, the messages, you forgot what's buried. What was it? I whispered. He swallowed. A box. A box of what? He hesitated. Then he looked me in the eyes with an expression so haunted it felt like a punch to the ribs. Proof? I blinked. Proof of what? He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back into the shadows and pointed toward the hallway. Come with me, you need to see it. No, I snapped. Tell me now. His jaw flexed. Ray, if I tell you, you'll think I'm lying. Try me. He took a slow breath. Your wife didn't die just from cancer. My blood went cold. What? He held up his hands defensively. I'm not saying you hurt her. I'm saying there was more going on in this house than you knew. I shook my head violently. No, she was sick. The doctors said. They said what she asked them to say. He cut in. She didn't want you to worry, but she told me the truth in the hospice room the night before she passed. I staggered back. What truth? He looked at me with hollow eyes. She believed someone was watching her, inside this house. Someone who knew her schedule. Someone who took things, moved things, left things. I clutched the counter until my knuckles whitened. That's impossible, I whispered. Thomas shook his head. She said she kept hearing footsteps when you weren't home, notes appearing in the middle of the night, her things moving, her scent placed in rooms she hadn't been in. My legs weakened. The doctors said it was medication, I whispered. Thomas's voice softened. She made me promise that if anything ever happened to you after she was gone, I would look under the house. The floor spun beneath me. And when you didn't answer my calls last week, he said, voice trembling, I knew something was wrong. He walked slowly to the hallway closet and crouched beside the open latch. His fingers brushed the wooden edge. Margaret said the box would explain everything. I shook my head, my body vibrating with fear, grief, disbelief. This is insane. He looked up at me. No, Ray, this, he tapped the loose latch, is insane. I stared at him, at the hatch, at the dark rectangle below. At the place where scraping sounds and dead woman's notes and nightmares had been coming from. Thomas reached down and pulled the hatch open. Cold air rushed up from the darkness. He held the edge and looked at me with a steady, grave expression. It's time, he whispered. Come see what your wife was too afraid to show you. The hatch yawned open like a dark mouth in the middle of my hallway. Cold air drifted upward, not musty, not moldy, but sharp, metallic, like old iron or dried blood. My throat tightened. Thomas held a small flashlight, its beam trembling slightly as he pointed it into the crawl space. Go, he whispered. I shook my head. You first. He hesitated only a moment, then lowered himself into the opening, feet dangling for a second before they found solid ground below. Come on, he murmured. It's only a few feet down. I swallowed the fear crawling up my spine and crouched beside the hatch. When my hands gripped the edge, the wood felt splintered, as if someone had been clawing at it recently. I lowered myself slowly, bones creaking, heart pounding. My feet touched the dirt floor. Thomas shined the flashlight around. The space was cramped, barely tall enough to kneel in. Pipes snaked across the ceiling above us like cold metal veins. My eyes scanned the shadows. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, but the air. Felt wrong, too still, too heavy, like someone had been here for a long, long time. Thomas crawled forward on his hands and knees. This way, he whispered. I followed, the earth cold beneath my palms. Dust filled the narrow air, making my lungs burn. Every sound felt magnified, the scrape of our knees, the low hum of distant furnaces, my uneven breaths. After what felt like minutes, Thomas paused and angled the flashlight toward a far corner. There, he whispered. I squinted. A wooden box, small. Old, edges warped with moisture, top covered in dust so thick it looked like untouched snow. My pulse thudded in my ears. Margaret told me about this, he said softly. She said she buried it when the noises started, before she got sick. Why didn't she tell me? I whispered. He turned to me, his expression sad, quiet. She didn't want you scared, not after everything else you'd been through. Everything else. The hospital bills, her decline, the sleepless nights. I understood, but part of me felt betrayed. We crawled forward. Thomas brushed the dust off the box. The flashlight beam flickered as he unlatched the small metal hook on the lid. My breath caught. Inside were papers, folded letters, Polaroid photos, notes with jagged handwriting. My stomach twisted. Thomas pulled out the top page carefully and handed it to me. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Margaret's. It was messy, slanted, uneven, childlike. I read the first line, "She doesn't see me like he does." I felt the blood drain from my face. Thomas reached for another page. It wasn't a letter, it was a drawing, a crude sketch of a woman in a kitchen, a shadowy figure drawn behind her, eyes scribbled dark. The woman in the drawing looked exactly like Margaret. My hands shook violently. "What is this?" I whispered. "Who drew these?" Thomas took a deep breath. "Someone who lived here before you." I stared at him. "What?" He nodded slowly. "This house had a previous owner before you and Margaret bought it, a man named Alan Pierce. The name meant nothing to me. He lived here with his wife," Thomas continued. "But after she died, he stayed in the house alone for almost 8 years, barely left, barely spoke. A chill crawled across my skin. What happened to him?" Thomas's eyes met mine. "He vanished." I felt the crawl space tighten around us. "The police searched everywhere," he said. "No body, no signs he'd ever left. Some believed he ran away. Others thought he never left this property." My breath froze. "You're telling me that man, the previous owner, was living under my house?" "Not living," Thomas said softly. "Margaret didn't believe he was alive when she found the box." My heart skipped. "She thought," he continued, "that he died down here, starved, trapped, or worse, never left the house because he didn't want to." I recoiled. "No, we would have smelled, we would have." Thomas shook his head. "Bodies break down differently in dry soil." "She researched it. She told me the dirt would hide everything." My fingers dug into the ground involuntarily. "So the noises, the scratching, the footsteps," he nodded. "She believed they were echoes, psychological, or maybe signs of him losing his mind down here." My stomach churned. I pulled another letter from the box, this one written shakier than the rest. "She moved the bed. She can hear me. I won't let her leave again." Another drawing, another woman, watching a doorway. My chest tightened. "Was obsessed with his wife," Thomas whispered. "When she died, he wrote hundreds of letters to her that he never sent. He believed she was hiding from him inside the walls." I stared at the pages, the frantic handwriting, the paranoia soaked into every line. And one thing hit me instantly. The notes I found today were identical to the style of these letters, but cleaner, copied, replicated. "Someone rewrote them," I whispered. "Someone copied his messages onto Margaret's paper." Thomas nodded. "Slipped them into your room to scare you." My voice cracked. "But why? Why now?" Thomas inhaled sharply. "Because the house is being sold next month." I blinked. "What? You told me last week," he continued, "that you were thinking of moving, downsizing, selling the house." I blinked again, the realization slamming into me. "If the new owners do a full remodel," he said quietly, "they'll dig up everything, they'll find him." The crawl space seemed to shrink around my knees, the malicious notes, the scratching. Missing phone, the lavender scent, the warnings about the man downstairs. Someone wasn't warning me. Someone was trying to scare me, push me, intimidate me. "Who?" I whispered hoarsely. "Who would do this?" Thomas closed the box gently and turned the flashlight toward the far wall, a narrow patch of loose dirt shaped like something buried beneath it. His voice was low, careful, afraid. "The only person who doesn't want you selling this house." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" He turned back to me. "Your neighbor," he said, "the widower next door." My heart lurched. "He's been in and out of your house for years helping with repairs, right?" Thomas asked. "Always offering to take care of things, always showing up uninvited." I swallowed hard. The images flooded back, my neighbor Daniel with his spare keys, his familiarity with the house, his interest in the property, his inconsistent stories, and then the lavender bottle he once said smelled like Margaret. My blood froze. Thomas nodded grimly. "He's the one who found Alan Pierce's journals when you moved in. He told Margaret the story. He fed her paranoia." My breath stuttered. And now, Thomas whispered, he's using her memory to drive you out so he can keep the house's secret buried forever. Before I could respond, a voice drifted down through the hatch, soft, calm, menacing. Ray, you missed our morning coffee. My heart stopped. It was Daniel, standing in my hallway above us. I clutched Thomas's arm. His whisper shook. He knows we found the box. The hatch slammed shut overhead with a violent thud that shook dirt from the ceiling. And in the darkness beneath the house, we heard the sound of heavy furniture being dragged across the floor, blocking the exit, trapping us inside. To keep the past buried, Daniel's voice murmured, sometimes you have to bury the people who dig it up.